Hi, this video is about measuring the hotness of Carolina Reaper powders. So Carolina Reaper powders have a reputation for being about 2.2 million. It doesn't necessarily mean that the Carolina Reaper powder in your possession is 2.2 million, but they have that sort of general online reputation for it. I've done other videos about what affects the hotness of chili powders, but where they're grown, how they're grown, how long they've been on the shelf for, storage conditions whilst being on the shelf, etc. can affect that. But the objective of this actual study when measuring these Carolina Reaper powders was actually to determine almost repeatability of test. By repeatability of test, what I mean by that is that if you take a Carolina Reaper powder, you make a sample of it and you test it 5 times, will you have what we call a good relative standard deviation or percentage relative standard deviation? I'll explain that in a bit, but I want to get some numbers that would be sort of, below 20%, because, that's when you get a relative standard deviation percentage less than 20%, then you're kind of good repeatability. I'm speaking rather fast, but I just want to say that we do have a webinar on at the end of every month. So this is February. But if you're watching late, don't worry about it, because if you use this link, which I'll put underneath the video, we'll have updated when the next webinar as well. So you can see this system in use for measuring chili powders. It's called the Foodsens Generation 4. Anyway, I want to go a bit quick because I want to get into the actual, let's say, meat of this. Just for your interest though, if you want to be able to measure the hotness of things like the chili powder on your smartphone, you will need the Foodsens Generation 4, but you can get the app to drive this off the Google Play Store. It's called Sense It All, or you can get it off the Apple Store. I've done that in the past. It's not double R, but I've misspelled it. But there's an App Store as well. So if you've got an iOS system, you can also get the app there. Anyway, it's no good unless you actually got the meter itself. But don't worry about that. Well, I just want you to say that the apps are available, but you do need the hardware. Let me get to the point anyway. So Carolina Reapers have a reputation for being 2.2 million Scoville Heat Units. If you speak to the people who kind of hold these kind of world records, you'll find out that actually this is a kind of quite conservative, actually. On occasions, these things can be hotter. But in order to get into the Guinness Book of Records, you kind of have to have kind of quite a body of evidence that, most of the time, let's say your result is 2.2 million Scoville Heat Units. But if you talk to, like I said, these record holders, actually you'll find out that some of their peppers, let's say, they actually say that they're hotter than what's actually recorded in the book. But that said, another thing that people get confused by is when people say the Carolina Reaper Chilli Pepper is 2.2 million, they are actually referring to the dry weight, not the wet weight. I've done other videos about this. In the wet weight, by the way, it's 220,000 Scoville Heat Units. The dry weight is when it's all desiccated down and it's essentially all the water's been driven off. You can appreciate that 85 to 90% of a Carolina Reaper is actually water. So when you desiccate it, then you end up essentially concentrating the capsaicin, and that gives you your 2.2 million. In this case, otherwise, it's in the fruit itself, it's probably more like 220,000 Scoville Heat Units. This misunderstanding leads to a bit of a controversy when people are talking about hot chili sauces, which are generally made from the peppers all sort of mashed up. They're going to be in the hundreds of thousands. They're not going to be in the millions, because the millions you'd have to drive off all the water, and then you wouldn't have a chili sauce. You'd have a chili tar. So we are talking about powders today, which are kind of desiccated, i.e. the water's being pulled off. Now, when you open up the app, so the app will allow you to run things like the chili sensor. The app will ask you, are you doing a 1 in 10 dilution? Are you doing a 1 in 100 dilution? Are you doing a 1 in 1,000 dilution? Are you doing a 1 in 10,000 dilution? The app will do that. So the reason I bring that up is because if you got something like a Carolina Reaper, and the app is quite good at guiding you, because what it'll do is you'll take your powder. You may say, well, I don't know what hotness I've got. Okay, so you've only got these 4 choices. So you do a 1 in 10. It'll say too high, more dilution. Essentially, what it's doing is looking at the raw signal, and you can see that you're outside of our, let's say, boundaries. Basically, too much capsaicin in there. And it say too high, more dilution. So you say, okay, I'll do a 1 in 100 dilution. Say too high, more dilution. You do a 1 in 1,000. If it's a mild Carolina Reaper powder, actually you may at this point get a result, but it may say too high, more dilution, and then you do a 10,000, you get a result. This is what we've just done in a recent study. In this recent study, we were more focused on repeatability because I had some concerns that some collaborators weren't getting the repeatability that I would have expected. So we made sure, I mean, this is something about Foodsens Generation 4 as well, that we do support, but we support through weekly webinars, personalized online training. So everyone who gets one got a personalized online training, weekly webinars, and then monthly webinars as well. And we also kind of try to produce material that kind of supports people as well. And this is, you know, an example. 1 in 100 dilution. So in the 1 in 100 dilution, this is, you will never have to look at raw data. You do not have to look at it. The app will tell you what the Scoville Heat Unit of that chili powder actually is. So the app connects to the meter gives the data back to the app will give you Scoville Heat Unit, but the app is also sending raw data to the cloud, which you can access by your username and password, but it also allows me to help troubleshoot people as well. So when I look at this is 1 in 100 dilution. It doesn't matter. I kind of call this the anvil. This is very flattened here, and this basically means there's so much capsaicin in this sample it's kind of gone above the instrument. So our scientists in the lab, you know, they knew this, they saw this, they went to the 1 in 100 dilution. Also, the app told them it was too concentrated. But in fact, what we did have, we had 3 powders in this test. One of them's very high, one of them's a bit lower, and one of them's the lowest, let's say. But I was quite pleased in this initial because I could see the tightness in the data. These are... for each of these, there's probably about 3 experiments on the same sample, and we're getting this very tight data. It's not all over the place. It's quite what I would call sort of, not spread out. We do a 1 in 1,000 dilution, so now we're diluting a bit more. We got the high, we got a medium, and we got a low in there as well. But if I just drew an imaginary line along here, this is... The app, by the way, tells you that you're too high dilution, so you don't need to do this, but all the data goes to the cloud. The nice thing about that is it allows people, like, if people choose to share their data with us, it means that we can help troubleshoot this. I just drew this imaginary line along here, and I can see that everything was above. Well, you may say it's below, but I can see that I've got a line here, and I can see all the data here. So this tells me this is a bit too intense still, and it's a 1 in 1,000 dilution. So now they go to their 1 in 10,000 dilution, and now... I can see that everything, you know, if I drew an imaginary line along here, this is 5 minus 5 here, then everything's below it. Really, really close, tight data, which is what I was after, because I was basically trying to ensure precision of repeatability. That I wanted to make sure that, given the same sample, we could keep on getting the same result. So in the end, I've kind of labeled them up: sample A, B, and C. This is what came off the app. So this tells me here that sample C, we got 1.5 million, 2.1 million, 1.4 million, 2.1 million, 2 million, 1.9 million. If you round that up, it's 2 million. But I wasn't rounding up. I was just... So I can see that all the results here. And the nice thing is that, you know, we've done 1, 2, 3, 4... sorry, I just did that badly. 6 counts there, 5 here, and something like 2, 4, 6, 8 here. So we did repeats because I wanted to make sure about repeatability of test. So sample B, we analyzed the data at the 1 in 10,000 dilution, and we got an, so this is the data, we got an average of 867,000 Scoville Heat Units. So that's why it's important, see, because you may have something with a headline figure of 2.2 million, but in fact, it's not, you know, it's less than. I think it's really quite rare to actually just have 2.2 million, because 2.2 million would have been recorded on a sample that was fairly fresh, actually. And all the time it was, every time you store something, heat, moisture, light will damage that capsaicin, so the score's going to go down. So it's not super unusual that you may have some sample with probably an unknown history, unknown growing conditions to be less than 2.2 million. So this was 867,000 Scoville Heat Units. But what I was really interested in this case was actually just to make sure that the repeatability of test was good. You know, so the repeatability of test here was 5%. Sample C, this came in at, when we average it all out, it came out at 1 point. Well, I was, you know, if I rounded this up to 1 decimal point, this is 1.9 million Scoville Heat Units, so it's kind of within expectations, with a relative standard deviation of 60%. There's a sort of rule of thumb that I'd like to get, if somebody was doing repeatable testing, I'd like all their results to be less than 20%. I'll talk about HPLC in a bit as well. But here we got 16%, and I do have other videos where we look at clients' data, and to be honest with you, people generally come in around about 15%. And then sample A, now I'm going to not apologize for this, I'm going to state why this is so high. So sample A, we could see it was the highest because, in fact, I could see the other two samples, and then this sample A is boom. But what I was trying to get in this study was not actually so much about accuracy. It was more about precision. And I think precision actually is the right word here. Precision is when I throw 8 darts and I get all the 8 darts in the same spot. I might not hit the bullseye, but I got 8 darts in the same spot. So the average here was 4.1 million. So I understand people, who, will say, oh, good, that's really high. The problem is, see, you don't know the history of this sample. I mean, I was thinking about this and thinking, well, how do you get to that? A, it's real, but I can accept that that's not, so most people wouldn't accept that. B, it may have been fortified with actual capsaicin crystals. I don't know if that is the case, but that could have been something that happened. But I was actually after precision, so the precision here of test was 13%. Now I'm going to talk about improving accuracy in this case, because I was quite happy with the other two results, but I'll talk about how to improve accuracy on this. By the way, I want to make a side note that when people talk about the Scoville Heat Unit ratings of things like chili powders, often they're just using, it's maybe opinion, it may be stuff pulled from the internet, or they may have actually gone out and done, got an HPLC test done on it. There's two methods out there. There's the AOAC 995.03, I think it's called. There's an AOAC method for running HPLC, and there's also an ASTA 21.3, and there's also a protocol from the Indian FDA, but it's really just and all three of them are actually the same protocol. They're really, they're really coming from the AOAC 995.03, I think it's called. So the thing about that is, in fact, I've got it up here, is actually it taps out at 650,000 Scoville Heat Units. So people have this great confidence. Oh, I've got the certificate of analysis. Oh, it was run by the ASTA 21.3 or the AOAC 995.03. But they have great confidence in it. Just out of interest, those methodologies tap out officially at 650,000 Scoville Heat Units. So it's almost like an unofficial certificate of analysis when you go into these super hots. This, by the way, is an HPLC. This is the Foodsens Generation 4. This is what we were actually using in this particular test. I just want you to get a sense of scale here that, it's the same person. Obviously, it's me in both shots. So that HPLC system probably comes up to my waist height if it was on the floor, where obviously I can just pick this up in my hand. So there's a big difference in the cost of ownership, the ease of use. This actually gives you the Scoville Heat Unit, whereas with an HPLC system, you end up having to do calibrations, etc., to actually get the results. The other way of actually measuring a super hot, that was 2.2 million, is to take 1 gram of, in this case, that capsaicin powder, dilute it in 2,200 liters of sugary water. If you want to know what 2,200 liters looks like, if you've got a pallet and you put a big tub on it and you've got 2 of those, that's what 2,200 liters looks like. I just want to give some context here that when we actually measure on the Foodsens Generation 4, the ease of use, the small amounts of material required, the cost of the kit, it's also beneficial when you actually look at the only other way of doing this is this HPLC, which doesn't have an official method above 650,000, or when you look at the Scoville, the Wilbur Scoville organoleptic testing, when you have to dilute it in sugary water, you're talking about diluting something in something like over 2,000 liters of water, which is incredible, a large amount of water. So back to the point now. So let's say we wanted to actually increase our accuracy. So we got a result that was really above expectations. So like I say, we don't really know what's happened to that sample. It may even be fortified with capsaicin crystals. I don't know is the answer. But if I wanted to improve our methodology, then what we did is we weighed out 5 milligrams and put it into 50 mils of the chili pot buffer. Now I realize that this is not a detailed enough SOP for this, but 5 milligrams is really hard to weigh out. So I realize that now actually, in fact I put it here, that in 5 milligrams is 0.005 grams. Very hard to weigh out. Most people don't have the balances or necessarily the skills to do this. So what I think is, so I just state it here, it's very hard to do that. So I think it's better to take a dynamic approach. And by a dynamic approach, I want you to weigh it out and then adjust the volume accordingly. So what I mean by that is, for example, if you trying to weigh out 5 milligrams, but you weigh out 3 milligrams, rather than trying to incrementally add it to 5 milligrams, just add that to 30 milliliters of buffer. For example, if you accidentally weigh out 6 milligrams, just add that to 60 mils of buffer. So you almost have a dynamic protocol which says, I know it's hard to weigh out such a small amount, so weigh out what I can weigh out and adjust the volume accordingly. And I should put here that, you've got a vortex, etc. But I just want to kind of highlight this dynamic approach. So in this particular study, when we were trying to measure this, this chili powder, I was more interested in precision, to try and make sure that this relative standard deviation was kind of below 20%. And we did that. But one of the ones I wasn't, if I was to now go back and look at that score again, I think we would take more of a dynamic approach to the volume rather than trying to get 5 milligrams, which is pretty hard to weigh out. Then I think we would have adjusted the volume according to what we actually could weigh out. So I'd like to take that sort of dynamic approach. Now, if you are interested in seeing a live demo or first of all, you can ask questions, but if you're interested in a live demo, we are running one this end of this month, but we do one at the end of every month. And what I'll end up doing is I'll put a link underneath this video, and then you'll be able to just register. Just use the link and you'll find out that we will have updated for the next month. So every month there's a live streaming demo of this, and you can just click this link and you'll find the next one, let's say, in the series. So I just want to say thank you. I should have put a bit of a contact us, but it's foodsens.com, contact us, and I'll put that link underneath the video as well, so if you've got any questions. So in summary, we were measuring 3 Carolina Reaper powders. They were definitely of different hotnesses. One of them came out quite high, and I think it's better therefore to sort of adopt this kind of dynamic approach. Weigh out what you can accurately weigh out, and then change the volume accordingly. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to us. Okay, thanks very much.